Hey guys, Brian Bradley from Egoscue here. I received an email from one of our affiliates in Hawaii, and he's been inundated with questions and answers and requests from our human event that we just had. The Egoscue University held a big thing called the Human Event, which will be in San Diego next year. And we want to discuss, part of the questions that we were going to talk about today are, I'll try to keep it as short as possible, and as much of a layman's term as possible. We'll try to mix terminology with no terminology. We were going to discuss the psoas. That was the specific question that came in. I never really like to separate it, even though I know the iliacus is the true hip flexor by definition in the medical field. I still don't like to separate it because of the intertwining of the fibers as it comes down toward the lesser trochanter. So there are a couple things that I want to touch upon. One of the things is I've been thinking about the questions for this, and what do you think about an explanation of the psoas? What is the psoas and what the function of it is? Importance of proper use of the psoas. How does the body break down without balance and function as it relates to the psoas and the iliacus, and how the body reacts, bony changes and spinal changes and musculo tendinous changes and ligamentous changes. We're not going to really go into a whole thing about blood supply and nerve. That can be maybe for another time when we talk about lymphatic system as it comes through the pelvic girdle. Very important topic though, which we will touch upon. Let's talk about degenerative hip pain, back pain, sciatic pain as it relates to this kind of stuff. The psoas itself, if you can think about where it attaches, originating on the spinal column as it relates to the psoas and originating on the iliac fossa and the inner ridge of the iliac crest, coming down to form, as you can see on these transverse processes in the bodies. This isn't the true attachment. If this was your psoas and this is your iliacus, they're going to come down and intertwine and attach to the lesser trochanter on the femur. So let's just think of it as one muscle for now instead of breaking it into two. That'll simplify things, and then we can talk later about breaking it into two. I have a book in front of me called Muscles, Testing, and Function. It's Kendall McCreary. It's their 5th edition. Great book, and I like to refer to this every once in a while when a customer asks me a question, and our affiliates are our customers. But it's in regards to, for example, somebody saying variations in length of the posterior leg muscles, like the hamstrings, the gastrocs, the glutes, the thoracolumbar fascia, all that. When somebody bends over and they're basically just reaching forward with their upper back to get to their toes, so it looks like all the roundings coming from their mid-thoracic back. So their back is like this, their pelvis is stuck in a posterior tilt where the butt is pulled under. Our goal by finding the psoas and getting it to function correctly is to take the psoas into an anterior tilt, bringing them back toward a more neutral pelvic girdle spinal position and allowing them to reach forward, which would then, if you think about the hamstring attachment at the ischial tuberosity, as it tilts forward, it automatically lengthens the hamstring. So the limitation they feel is my hamstrings are so tight. In our opinion, it's because the pelvic girdle is not moving based on the iliacus and the psoas not moving it there. So thinking about increasing hip flexion by bringing the torso closer to the quadricep versus hip flexion bringing the leg closer to the torso. So it's just bringing top to bottom, almost like in a full sit-up when somebody's holding your legs. I was at a big workshop this weekend. We were discussing, I had some people out there discussing, whether full sit-ups were good or bad. I think we need to rule out that full sit-ups are not bad for you. I know over the past 6-8 years, a lot of the certifying agencies were under the belief system that training your abs is a waste of time. I know even Dr. Stuart McGill up in Canada, I think he's a doc, maybe he's a PT, I'm not sure. Either way, great studies he has on lumbosacral pain and the compression forces that are in there. But I would even believe that in his mind, he would never tell you that doing a full sit-ups is detrimental to your back if your body was in the right position or attempting to get in the right position prior to doing it. So if we talk about this filet mignon or the iliopsoas of the human body, it is the only muscle that attaches, that I can think of, that attaches from the lower body, the lower extremity, through the pelvic girdle and into the spinal column, or vice versa, whatever direction you happen to be in. But it crosses all 3 sections of the body. It's not like the hamstring, the sacrotuberous ligament, and the lumbar erectors, which are separate entities working maybe as one unit. This is one unit, especially as it relates to the psoas. It comes down from those lumbar vertebrae, attaches right into that lesser trochanter through the pelvic girdle. The hip and pelvic girdle explanation would be where the iliacus comes in. So let's talk supine groin progressive for a second, or supine groin on towels, or supine groin, I won't even say supine groin stretch because it just pisses me off when people even use it. I don't even like that. The supine groin progressive is essential. The Egoscue Tower is essential to find your primary hip flexor. And it's the #1 exercise that a person will want to take time off of because they just don't know why they're doing it. Not because they don't have the time. If you take the time to explain why it's so important, they'll get something out of it. I suggest you try it on yourself first. So as it relates to chronic back pain, just laying on your back with both legs up over a block will help you find your psoas and your iliacus, even though you're not doing hip flexion, internal, external rotation, arching of your back. Don't think of it as I've got to train the muscle in its normal range of motion to find it. Think of I've got to get the muscle to engage. Just laying in static back on your back with your legs up over a block, just relaxing, letting gravity do the work, will force your thoracic spine to change, will get your lumbar erectors to kind of kick off a little bit rather than being over-facilitated or overused, and that will allow you to find your primary hip flexor, which is the filet mignon of our whole piece of beef that we're walking around in. Sorry for you vegetarians, I apologize. I'll try to come up with a bean curd analogy. Let's see here. Tests that are being used to follow the progress after exercises or menus with Egoscue. To be honest, it's the femur position will dictate a lot to you. It's the one thing that the customer doesn't really think about. If you have the Posture Solutions DVD by Egoscue, you'll see that that's one of the favorite places that I go to evaluate someone's posture. So if we're looking at the psoas and we're trying to get somebody to find it or to shut it off, because remember, it's defined as now short and tight, and that's why people don't want you to train it because they think it's overused. We at Egoscue kind of believe you need to go the other direction. You need to facilitate this muscle in its right plane and right normal range of motion so that you can get it to shut off and on. And I don't mean off completely because the muscle's really never off. But if it has its stability factor and its movement factor to it, you've got to train this muscle that it's not all right to sit here like this all day. Because if I ask you to hold your arm like this for 30 days, you'd think I was crazy. But yet you walk around with tight hip flexors all the time because you're sitting all day long and the muscle learns to shorten. Which is why when you get up out of a chair, you're a little achy and your hamstrings aren't real loose. So do your exercises, especially the supine groin progressive, because it will allow gravity and the ground reaction force from the floor to open up your thoracic spine, change that kyphotic convexity that's in your upper back like this, and allow it to flatten out to its normal range, which then changes everything down and up the chain. So if you can get the psoas to be found, then the sit and reach test becomes very functional because it now shows you that your pelvis is your driver to get to your toes versus your back being the driver to get to your toes. So no matter if you're getting up and down off a toilet, in and out of a car, the sit and reach test, swinging a golf club, swinging a baseball bat, throwing a baseball, you have to find your primary hip flexor, or else your shoulder, especially at the point where your arm is back here and the UCL is under so much stress because you have this valgus stress and this varus torque to bring it forward. The slingshot mechanism for that is the bottom of the whip, which is the pelvic girdle. So to simplify things, find your hip flexor, turn it on, not stretch your hip flexor to turn it off. We've got to turn it on. We've got to find it. And yeah, full sit-ups may not be the way to go about it right away, but learning how to do just the normal pelvic tilt might be that way. Instead of using your back to do the arch, let your pelvis pull itself forward. Increase that hip flexion by bringing the lumbar spine toward the femur. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. It's painfree@egoscue.com. That's painfree@egoscue.com. Or you can call me at 1-800-995-8434. I'd love to hear your agreements or disagreements. And just give me some time to get back to it. So I hope this has been helpful. And we'll try to build a couple more segments on top of this. I'm sure we will as it relates to showing some exercises. Thank you very much.